We now chat to SACP General Secretary Mapaila. Good afternoon, welcome to the program on Radio Islam.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon too.
This year was the 101 anniversary of the SACP. It was celebrated in Mpumalanga. 101 years, a long time the SACP has been in existence. At this juncture, with the 101 anniversary, what was the SACP reflecting on?
Well, we reflected deeply about the conditions of the working class in South Africa, which are worsening day by day because of the capitalist system and imperialism and continued colonization of our resources by European powers and the USA in particular, and lack of policy sovereignty by our countries, lack of national independence, of course with some democratic freedoms there and there, but largely the fact that our people continue to live in poverty is an indictment not only on us, because we haven't really grappled with political power, but also on the cowards of imperialist forces that continue to unashamedly suck out resources from developing countries and leave people in poverty and misery when they live in luxury in their own respective countries. So we reflected on that and also on the international situation, looked into the changing world balance of forces, the changing unipolar world system, which is dominated by the USA and its European allies, and that this waning power of US imperialism has made it more arrogant and more brutal, because it's afraid of losing this power. It's rejecting an emerging system of multipolar organizations, what we call multipolarity system, where instead of having one unipolar world domination that is arrogant, impervious to the people's needs, we have a multipolar system of collaboration of countries, of cooperation, of sharing, of looking at the interest of the world rather than the interest of one single power that cajoles everyone. So this is a sign of this crisis, the capitalist crisis that is happening. And of course, with all of that, we've seen how it has then postured itself in different parts of the world, on the African continent, setting up military power bases, the so-called Africa command systems, in order to continue subjugation of the African countries. We have seen its role in the Middle East, for instance, with destabilization of the countries of the Middle East, its role in Lebanon, its role in Iran, its role in Iraq and other parts in Syria, continued domination, putting the country into a civil war, or into a war with the people that it has funded, and its continued support for Israel, apartheid Israel, that continues to oppress the Palestinian people. I mean, every single day there are raids in Palestinian communities, killing of women and children. Journalist Abu Akleh was killed on daylight by Israeli forces, and the new president or prime minister just said it openly that none of the soldiers of Israel who killed Abu Akleh will answer to anybody. Just the impunity of the exercise of power. We were sharing these concerns basically about the world situation, the U.S. continued arrogance in the Korean Peninsula, for instance, dividing North and South Korea, with no less than 50,000 soldiers, US soldiers stationed there as part of supporting the South Korea to buffer the unification of a country that they divided. And what they are trying to do now in Ukraine, for instance, with their expansion towards Russian sovereignty, unfortunately or fortunately, Russia was able to stand for itself. And of course, in that process, then embarking on special military operation in Ukraine, them imposing massive sanctions, leading to a crisis in the world that we are now seeing, a crisis of living for the working class. caused by high inflation of goods and services and products, largely the grains that are produced in those countries, particularly the Russia-Ukraine peninsula, now no longer available easily to the world because of their rapacious nature to control everybody, the expanding of their own territories, the support of that clown government of Ukraine, on the basis that it must ultimately create a massive base for U.S. imperialism with its European powers to overpower Russia. But Russia was able to stand up for itself. But still, because of the mighty power that they have, you can see the continued provocations. They continue to provoke China in the Taiwan Straits. Basically, the U.S. is just a loose, raging bull that is provoking wars everywhere in the world, provoking independent states, subjugating them to their control, and so forth. This is what we are seeing, and therefore we're reflecting on that as a Communist Party. Even in the Latin American countries, we can speak forever talking about the U.S. country by country on what they are doing. So we're doing a summary of brief of these conditions in the world and what causes them here at home and their interrelationship with the role of the USA.
Very, very comprehensive. What you've shared with us really is a summary of what's going on in South Africa, the challenges, and globally, and a broad view of the challenges that the world faces. What is the role of the SACP at a ANC elective conference? We know that obviously SACP is part of the tripartite alliance, but in real terms, what is the function? Are you able to vote? How do you get your say in terms of the structures? Is there any formal position? So how does it work?
Firstly, we do not vote in the ANC conference, but we have the right to speak. We do not vote, but we have the right to speak. And we can then propose measures that need to be taken policy-wise, because this is a policy, this is a conference, it's a national conference, decide on everything, including policy of the ANC, the constitution, and everything else. So we contribute in everything. We are not prohibited on anything. We can only not move a motion. So we make a contribution, people take up our contribution and put a motion to vote for it if it requires so that it's formalized as a decision of the ANC. But our relationship with the ANC comes from the fact that firstly we share a common struggle, what we call the National Democratic Revolution, which is a common struggle to liberate South Africa from colonial domination, initially at the time that it was created, from colonial domination by the British, because we're a British dominion. So we're coming out of British dominion, British control, and therefore we're resolving the national question in the colonies. And this was a broad objective of the International Communist and Workers' Movement. And therefore we participated in that, and therefore our struggle against this British imperialism had to liberate our people from racial exploitation and racial oppression and create a non-racial South Africa, from a gender oppression and create a non-sexist South Africa, from a class capitalist exploitation and create an egalitarian economic system that we said, according to the ANC, which we fully embraced at the time, will have mixed economy, but in the main with the public sector role of the economy being dominant. So in other words, you can end exploitation of the working class of the people by participating actively in the economy through the public sector.
Yes. Talking about that, with the public wage negotiation that has been ongoing, and the labor not getting what they want, does the SACP still see that the objectives that the SACP want to achieve for the labor and for the common class in the country can be achieved through the tripartite alliance, where some of those objectives obviously going against what the ANC really stands for these days in terms of the capitalist agenda that is allowed to dominate?
Well, firstly, let me complete the point that having agreed on the program, the National Democratic Revolution, we also have what we call a dual membership, which is at the core of this alliance. That SACP members can be ANC members can be SAC members and COSATU members, vice versa. But centrally to this, it's largely one member belonging to more than one organization, and these organizations are working together. Some belong to the three of the organization, even four, because we have SANCO as well, the civic movement. So it's important in shaping our participation here at conference, because whatever policies that they take will also affect us. And if these members don't share this policy framework, when they come to the other organization, they find that these are contradictory. So our participation here smooths the process for or congeality of our discussions. But when it comes to the public wage negotiations, we have made our position very clear. Firstly, we have rejected the capitalist neoliberal economic system in the country because we think it has failed to respond to the socio-economic needs of the majority of the people of this country. It has kept the old ruling class to be the same, white racist, and they continue to be in charge of the economy of the country. Any other form of participation in the economy has become minuscule. And for that matter, even SOE, state-owned enterprises, which have been important instrument for the development of our country, some of them, or majority of them, have been privatized. Not majority, but most critical ones have been privatized, and therefore they are not able to play that critical role, because capital, once it has the resources in its hands, it has no obligation to society. Its obligation is to make more money for its investors or shareholders. So in this regard, we have said the government must ditch this neoliberal economic trajectory, and out of that, stop austerity measures imposed on us by the IMF and the World Bank and the OECD countries, as well as the capitalist rating agencies that have continued to control how we manage our economy, even when it doesn't benefit the people. So we just tick the boxes that we are running the economy well, and therefore making a mockery of our democracy. Of course, we want an economy that is run well, without corruption and malfeasance and maladministration and all those things. But whatever economy that we have under democracy must serve the people. And if you have the best economy, so-called, or even the best constitution, but the people live in poverty, what's the need for it? So it is therefore important, because those people will never subject themselves to any form of the rule of the constitution if they are dying of hunger every day. They will have to go and find a way to survive. And if that survival, it becomes in different forms, they will not care. And we have rejected the imposition of austerity measures, including, therefore, of this 3% on public sector wage workers. We believe that government can do better on this, and we have called on workers that they must never give in to this Mickey position of government offering them 3%. When these workers, public sector workers, took the highest strain in the novel crisis of COVID-19, and amongst them frontline workers, they went there, they died on duty, fighting for the people of this country, and government reneged on an agreement, a 3-year multi-layer agreement with workers. After having paid it or honored it for 2 years, they reneged on the 3rd year, precisely because apparently they wanted to blackmail workers who are in COVID-19. We don't have resources. We need this money to be diverted to other needs. And we know what happened during COVID-19. There were a lot of corruption across provinces, even at national level, with people who siphoned COVID funds for their own needs. And therefore, this excuse that there was no money is not good enough. So workers deserve what is due to them, and government must honor that. And whatever was reneged on, government must still make a way to recover it back to the workers.
If Chris Hani was here today, and his analysis, how would he have viewed what has happened of the struggle, how the country is being run, the issues that the country faces, the divisions that within the political circles?
Well, talking about Chris Hani, firstly, we are meeting here just a few weeks after his murderer, Janus Walus, was released from prison on parole by the order of the Constitutional Court, which, as you know, we were quite disappointed by that decision because we felt that our views regarding why he should have stayed in jail were not considered. And this is a man that had never shown any form of remorse or even apologized or even told the truth about what happened with the murder of Comrade Chris. That's why even at this conference we've called for the conference to consider the inquest on the death of Comrade Chris and others, including the Craddock 4, Noctulus Milan and several others who died under apartheid, victims of apartheid, whose truth their families still do not know. But I think Chris will be much more concerned about, without being prophesizing, will be much more concerned about the state of the movement, the divisions in the movement, the moral decay inside the liberation forces, the huge affinity with resources for people, the role of money as the new ideology inside the movement. He will quite be disappointed by that, but I know that he will certainly fight against those kind of things, because he had articulated some of these things when he was still alive about what socialism is, and he said it's not about big words or anything. To paraphrase what he said, that socialism is simply about clean running water for the poor and the people as a whole, access to health services, to basic education, or to education, to food and to work. Basic things. Socialism in this country, if government guarantees all of these things, including housing that he mentioned, that's why we honored him with launching a campaign that we call the Triple H. Health, hunger, housing. So it's a program to fight against hunger, to fight against lack of housing and lack of health for the people. So we say if you meet this basic need that Chris has outlined, we won't characterize you as a poor person. So now majority of our people sometimes go to bed without eating. We have one of the highest inequalities in terms of poverty rates, unemployment, as well as general inequalities in society. So he will certainly be disappointed about that. But I think he will appreciate the efforts that we are putting to try and fight against these vestiges, also of apartheid capitalist system.
Certainly. It's been a pleasure chatting to you. Thank you very much for sharing the thoughts.
Thank you, my dear.
We wish you all the best.
All right, bro.
Thank you.
Thank
Go
you.
well. Bye-bye.